I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
I've been working on launching a couple new shows for the channel, so I haven't laid down the Nerd Beat 411 in a while, so I'm breaking the news into two segments this week. Today I'm covering the latest DC Comics news. Tomorrow I cover Marvel Comics and the recent Brian Woods controversy. But we're in the now, and we're talking DC Comics. DC Comics leaked plans for a black character taking the Batman mantle next year. Outrage clicks ensued. Tom King swears Batman 78 and 79 are important. Year the Villain mastermind Scott Snyder is trying to spin DC's broken continuity. The buck stops here, folks. DC continues spoiling Snyder's biggest event ever, Year the Villain, in hopes people will actually care. Finally, Brian Michael Bendis is opting out of Year the Villain. Every other writer at DC wishes they could do the same. It's time to dig into all the details of today's DC Comics news. Comicbook.com reports superheroes and race have been a hot topic in the last few years as the comic book industry has strived for greater diversity in its characters. Well, that discussion is about to enter a bold new chapter as it's being rumored that DC Comics is about to introduce a black Batman into the franchise. The new rumor states that in the summer 2020 up to 2021, DC Comics will introduce a black Batman character into the DC universe. As reported by Bleeding Cool, DC Comics is planning to bring us a black Batman, not Bruce Wayne, but someone else donning the cowl and cape. Who this new Batman will be, we don't know. All we have been told is that it won't be Duke Thomas, the young man previously teased as taking on the role of Robin and Batman to come. That's not a lot of information to work on, though BC notes there are several likely possibilities for how this will go down. Batwing. Both David Zavimbe and Luke Fox have won the Batwing mantle, and both men would arguably be contenders to take on the full mantle of Batman. Black Lightning. Batman and Black Lightning have been working together on the Outsiders team. If there's need for someone to simply fill in for an absent Batman, Black Lightning has the experience and connections to do it. There is, of course, always the possibility that DC will introduce a new character who will end up being Black Batman. It's a move that DC Comics has made before. In 1992, the publisher introduced the character of Azrael into the Batman mythos as the assassin agent of a pious and violent religious cult. 1 year later, Azrael stepped into the Batman mantle full-time after Bruce Wayne's back was broken by Bane. That's all to say, with the runway of summer 2020 until 2021, DC has plenty of time to introduce a new character and give him a story that allows fans to really get to know him before seeing him step up and take on the Batman mantle. As should be expected, this change will no doubt spark the usual and tired debate about whether or not changing an established character's race is the way to go, or whether or not expanded diversity means creating new characters of different ethnic backgrounds. DC could arguably walk the tightrope down the middle if it indeed creates a new black character, but gives him a familiar mantle to inhabit. Alright, so first I want to address the hypocrisy of comicbook.com reporter Kofi Outlaw, specifically his stating, "This change will no doubt spark the usual and tired debate about whether or not changing an established character's race is the way to go." Bro, you literally reported this to generate outrage-based clicks, so jump off your high horse. You could have just reported a new character will be taking up the mantle of Batman. You purposely included the rumor regarding the character's race because you wanted to spark debate about established character race. The only thing tired here is you trying to pretend like you're above anything. Now that I've addressed the hypocrite in the room, I'll give my thoughts on why this really isn't that big of a deal, and also why people should be concerned. If we're talking about Batman as a mantle, literally anyone can take it up and be Batman. Race swapping the Bruce Wayne character would be wrong in my opinion, but they aren't talking about that. It sounds like Bruce will be giving up the mantle to work on his relationship with Catwoman in Tom King's Batman Catwoman maxi series. I really hope you could all hear me roll my eyes during that line. The pervasive rumor is Luke Fox, aka Batwing, will take up the role of Batman in 2020 for a relatively short period of time before Bruce returns to Gotham. Are DC Comics customers going to support 12 months of Batman comics with someone other than Bruce Wayne? That's a whole nother debate, and I personally don't think race has much of anything to do with it. People always resist change in the beginning, but if DC Comics and the new Batman writer set up Luke Fox's ascension to Batman well and write good stories, people will support it. The debut issue is all but guaranteed to sell a ton of Batman comics as speculators and collectors gobble up as many copies as possible. It sounds like a nice problem to have, but DC needs to plan well for this. If speculators and collectors grab a majority of their comics and actual Batman readers are left high and dry, which has happened, it might not even matter if it's set up well. Would most readers prefer Bruce Wayne as Batman? Absolutely. But I firmly believe readers will support any Batman regardless of race if the story and character are compelling. And therein lies the real issue with this proposed change. This has Brian Michael Bendis' fingerprints all over it. He already used this exact same plot device twice at Marvel Comics with Spider-Man and Iron Man. Neither character ever really caught on with Bendis at the helm. Not because people are opposed to the change, but mostly because he's beyond spent as a writer. Miles Morales was bland, and his only real character trait was being severely overpowered under Bendis. He wrote Riri Williams as a sociopath who never learns from her mistakes, because she was never allowed to make any. Both characters were dead in the water under Bendis, and a lot of that has to do with the age of the characters. Bendis speak is an issue with any series he writes, but if the character is under the age of 20, it gets dialed up to unbearable. His younger characters are always way too snarky, and the supporting cast are just there to reaffirm how great they are. If, as everyone expects, Brian Michael Bendis is the writer behind the new Black Batman, it will absolutely fail. He's tried the exact same story twice and failed miserably. His writing quality at DC continues sinking as he picks up more and more titles to write. The easiest way to ensure this new black version of Batman fails is to let Bendis or any of his minions get their hands on him. And that's not the fault of the comic readers. That's on DC management's Dan Didio, Jim Lee, and Bob Harris, who continue proving month after month they're completely incompetent. CBR.com is reporting, ever since the heartbreaking events of Batman 50, Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle have been, for lack of a better term, broken up. While the series was building up to the two's wedding, unknowingly manipulated by Bane left Batman at the altar. Since then, the two have been on the outs. That is, until Selina showed up to help Bruce at the start of the currently unfolding City of Bane storyline. Now, it appears as if the series will once again shift focus to the two star-crossed lovers in the next two issues, which writer Tom King promises to be the most important of his run. Starting next week, Batman 78 and 79, which focus on Batman and Catwoman after the wedding, may be the most important issues I've written, King tweeted, the culmination of so much, and Clay's art, from the first kiss to the last. On top of this tease, King also shared a page from one of the issues featuring Batman and Catwoman on a boat, a flashback to the Golden Age version of the start of their relationship. King took the reins of the Batman series at the start of the Rebirth Initiative in 2016. The writer's tenure will end with the conclusion of City of Bane, which will lead to a 12-issue limited series Batman Catwoman that will serve as the official ending of King's story. Tom King's Batman has been spectacularly bad during the lead up to and post-wedding. The 12 Angry Men story following it wasn't terrible, but there hasn't been an issue worth recommending since Tom King shot Dick Grayson in the head and ruined the Nightwing series alongside his Batmess in Batman 55. The only thing important about Batman 78 and 79 is readers are 2 issues closer to him exiting the series for good. Anyone who believes King's hype at this point might as well wish upon a star while they're at it. After all the damage King's done to the Batman character in DC as a whole now, all he has left are empty promises. After customer backlash following the events of Batman 50, he reassured readers that this was the midway point of an epic 100-issue story arc, and if they remained patient, they would be rewarded with City of Bane. I remember thinking, this man expects readers to spend $200 and wait 2 years for the payoff. Thankfully, most sane people exited the series, and the only people left buying it are King fanboys and completionists who don't even read the comics anyway. Of course, he didn't even make it to issue 100 before exiting, and City of Bane is fourth-rate Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Rises fanfic. Anyone who believes Tom King's fake hype deserves to be ripped off at this point. I will, of course, fully document 2 more empty promises in all of Tom King's disappointing glory right here on the channel with full reviews of Batman 78 and 79. I'm reading these books so you don't have to. According to CBR, recently in the pages of Justice League, several of the team's heroes travel back in time, only to find themselves face to face with the Justice Society of America in their physical prime at the start of World War II. However, the crossover event Doomsday Clock has revealed the Golden Age Super Team was erased from DC Universe by Dr. Manhattan. According to the Justice League co-writer Scott Snyder, these discrepancies will be resolved in the near future. Without spoiling the current Justice League storyline, Snyder hinted that the connections between his series and Doomsday Clock will be addressed soon. We're all working on one big tapestry. What Geoff Johns is doing in Doomsday Clock is definitely going to inform what we're doing here. And think what Brian Michael Bendis is doing with Millennium is a big part of the story that we're trying to coordinate with. He explained to Newsarama. We definitely want you to feel like, as you read these, that there are connections and that they make sense and they tie together and all of that. He continued, if you're patient with us, just wait and see. Some of those connections and some of those tie-ins are going to come in later when we explain how things cross over from one neighborhood of the DCU to the other. I really like Scott Snyder. He seems like a good guy, and I personally feel he's a genuine article that wants to deliver quality comics to DC customers. But I don't for a second think that he, Geoff Johns, and Brian Michael Bendis pre-coordinated anything between Doomsday Clock, Year the Villain, or the Legion of Superheroes relaunch. DC continuity is an absolute mess at this point, and I don't necessarily blame Snyder, Johns, or Bendis, to be honest. This is all par for the course of widespread mismanagement plaguing DC Comics the past 12 to 18 months. Dan Didio, Jim Lee, and Bob Harras have done everything in their power to kill any momentum DC Comics had following DC Rebirth. Geoff Johns laid the foundation for years of success that would culminate in the Doomsday Clock series. Unfortunately, Geoff Johns vacated his chief creative officer role to pursue a more lucrative future in Hollywood. As soon as Scott Snyder's Dark Knight's Metal hit, which I unaffectionately refer to as lame, 5th grade fanfic, Rebirth was abandoned, and DC immediately started going to crap. Sure, there are some hit books like Batman Who Lulls, but they basically card up their mid-tier books at the same time. Flash, Aquaman, Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, and other titles that perennially shipped at good volume are all canceled or basically dead at this point. What does Snyder mean by this will all be connected? They're going to add a couple of panels here and there and say, see, it's connected. But DC readers already see through this and know their continuity is the biggest joke in comic books at this point. There's a reason DC feels like a disjointed mess right now, because it is. And it's all on Dan Didio, Jim Lee, and Bob Harras for not managing the characters, titles, and creators appropriately. Newsarama reports the last two DC heroes infected by the Batman Who Laughs to serve as part of the villainous Secret Six have been revealed in a video posted to the publisher's official Superman Twitter account. As revealed in the tweet, the final two members of the Secret Six are Donna Troy and Jim Gordon. They join Shazam, Hawkman, Supergirl, and Blue Beetle to round out the heroes secretly subverted by the Batman Who Laughs as part of DC's ongoing You're the Villain story. The new Secret Six are also the primary villains of the just-launched Batman Superman ongoing title, with some of them even spinning off to solo one-shots. DC finally spoiled the only mystery left for their DOA You're the Villain event. I'm not sure if the event would have been successful if they hadn't revealed every single secret before Joshua Williamson's Batman Superman launch, but spoiling the entire event and the central mystery behind the series was managerial malpractice as far as I'm concerned. I, for one, can't wait for AT&T to get through all their priorities and finally take a peek at DC Comics. There's no way Dan Didio is surviving the absolute train wreck he steered the publisher into. I do think Jim Lee will survive because everyone likes him for reasons, and Bob Harras is a comic industry zombie who can't be killed. My prediction, Dan Didio gets a boot squarely in his behind within the next 24 months. The sooner the better. Hashtag fire Dan Didio. According to Newsarama, DC have pulled November 13 Superman 17 from the Year of the Villain crossover event, have informed retailers they will be replacing the planned acetate cover with new art by Ivan Reis and Joe Prado without the event's trade dress. That new cover has not been released. We have included the two-part original cover here. Back in mid-August, DC desolicited Superman 14 and Supergirl 33 as tie-ins to the event. Superman 15 and 16 remain solicited as part of the Year of the Villain. I'm not a huge fan of Brian Michael Bendis, but he's doing the right thing disassociating his Superman series from Year the Villain. Superman has its own vast array of issues and probably couldn't survive another failed idea, not of his making, weighing it down. It's too bad other writers don't have the stroke to get their titles away from Scott Snyder's latest, biggest idea ever. It's the albatross weighing the entire publisher down at the moment. I personally canceled all my ongoing DC Comics titles because I want nothing to do with Year the Villain. And I have it on good authority that I'm not the only one. Many loyal DC readers have also said enough is enough and canceled their pulls for any DC series associated with Year the Villain. Kudos to Bendis for reading the tea leaves correctly and using some of his power at DC to free his fans from this stupid, awful waste of time and money. That wraps up today's DC Comics news. DC are heavily rumored to introduce a new Black Batman in 2020. I personally think there will be resistance, but if the story and character are well written, people will buy it. Unfortunately, it appears Bendis is writing it, so the story and characters are guaranteed to be not well written. Tom King is desperate for readers to stick with Batman through the end of City of Bane. Newsflash, they shouldn't. Scott Snyder's trying to sell that Year the Villain, Doomsday Clock, and Legion of Superheroes are all part of one large pre-coordinated DC tapestry. Sorry, Scott, nobody's picking up what you're putting down. DC continuity feels like it's a complete mess, because it is. DC's Brain Trust finally spoiled the entire lineup of the Secret Six. People still hate Year the Villain. Finally, Brian Michael Bendis used his superpowers for good for a change and spared Superman readers any more tie-ins to the lame-as-hell Year the Villain event. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I hope you come back tomorrow for the conclusion of this week's comic industry news. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.